Hi guys, there's a few reasons why I'm doing a video on these two fragrances today. I'm talking about two Dior fragrances in Parfum concentration, and those fragrances are EAU SAUVAGE Parfum from 2017, although the original launched in 2012, and Fahrenheit Parfum from 2014. So the reason I'm doing this video today is a few days ago I did a video called 1010 Men's Designer Fragrances. I left these two fragrances off because I'm uncertain with what their future is going to be. And also, I'm doing the video so that you guys will find out what these are all about in case you do not know. Get your nose on them, perhaps get bottles, because we really do not know what Dior is going to be doing with the two additional parfums that are in the collection of fragrances. So find out about these two fragrances coming right up. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Sebastian, talking to you about Dior's two other parfum fragrances. There is another parfum, by the way. I'm not going to be speaking about that one. That one's in the Sauvage collection. I'm mostly talking about these two old school fragrances that come in parfum concentrations. The original EAU SAUVAGE Parfum, this is how much I have left, is from 2012. Then they relaunched it, keeping somewhat very similar touches of the original 2012 version here in 2017. And that's been around. And then finally Fahrenheit launched in 2014. And they're still on the market. The thing is with these two fragrances, they're not available at like the Dior website. I couldn't find them. I searched and searched, and Dior's website are kind of weird. They have websites in different territories and countries, and even though you do a search on Google, it brings it up, then you find out it's not really the USA website and you can't get it. But they're available at discounters like FragranceNet, and I have them linked in the info box. And if you haven't gotten your nose on these two designer fragrances, which happen to be some of my favorite fragrances, and I'll get to why I didn't feature them in the 1010 video, I think you need to get your nose on these, and especially if you like them, get yourself a bottle, because as I said, we don't know what the deal is with Dior, what they're going to be doing. You know, they launched the new Dior Homme Parfum 2025 edition, and it was a complete letdown, a complete disappointment, and I have a feeling that these might be going down the same route. You know, dumbing down the fragrances and making them extremely boring. So I think the way the fragrances launched, in 2012 they launched the EAU SAUVAGE original Parfum, and at that time I was very new to doing any YouTube videos. In fact, my very first video on another channel was launched in 2012, August of 2012. And I think I bought my first bottle of EAU SAUVAGE Parfum in 2013. And I did a video about it. Really, really loved it. And they have changed the formula between the 2012 version and the 2014 version. And so the 2014 version is the one I'm going to be talking to you about. Both versions, in fact, all three of the fragrances I'm going to speak about today, the Fahrenheit as well, are created by Francois Demachy, and he created really, really amazing parfum concentrations of men's fragrances. In fact, the original EAU SAUVAGE Parfum was super, super fantastic. I absolutely loved it, and it's a disappointment that it's not selling today. But they gave us something very, very close. They did change around the formula though. So between the 2012 version and the 2017 version of the EAU SAUVAGE Parfum, they basically removed the myrrh note, which was creating an ambery resinous experience in the original EAU SAUVAGE Parfum, and they added Elemi resin in the 2017 version. So it changed it up a little bit. It doesn't come off as ambery as it was because the myrrh note did create that. And even though I prefer the 2012, I think the 2017 is quite precious and definitely worth having in a collection of concentrated men's fragrances. You can see the bottles are the same. The labels basically got changed. And the juice color is different as well. The greenness is so much greener, and the 2017 is yellower. So I think that's the myrrh that's causing that. Myrrh, as it ages and gets older in a bottle, creates color in a fragrance and just gets really darker and darker. Even though it came in a dark color, I think that was something that when the fragrance was macerating and maturating, that's how it came, but it has gotten a little darker. With this one, it never gets darker, but it's certainly much darker than the original Eau de Toilette Eau Sauvage. But the fragrance features notes of Calabrian Bergamot, Haitian Vetiver, Elemi resin. These are the notes that the Dior website lists. For me, I get additional floral notes. For example, in the original Eau Sauvage, there's jasmine. I get those. I get aromatics here, like lavender. There's additional citruses that come in, some green, bitter types of citrusy notes. There's, of course, woods in the base. And I do get an ambery experience with the Eau Sauvage Parfum 2017. But as I was saying, not as strong of an amber resinous experience that the 2012 Eau Sauvage Parfum provided. But I've been happy with this as it is, and if this is what Dior did, changed it up for us, gave us a different take on the Parfum, even though trying to keep it as close to the original Eau Sauvage Parfum as they can, I think I was fine with it, but I feel like there are people that prefer the original 2012 version over the 2017 version, and definitely the 2012 version was a lot more concentrated. I feel like the myrrh note provided a lot more depth, and the smell is a little different as well in comparison to the 2017 version. Elemi resin does create a resinous ambery experience, but it also has a citrusy edge about it, so it amplified the citrusy touches in this fragrance. But man, it's a great scent. It's super, super fantastic. I absolutely love it. Why did I leave it off the list of 1010 fragrances? I've spoken a lot about these two fragrances. In fact, the trio of parfums from Dior were some of my favorites. They were absolutely my favorites. So we started with the 2012 version of Eau Sauvage Parfum. In 2014, we got the Fahrenheit Parfum. At the end of the year in 2014, we also got the Dior Homme Parfum, the original in the 75 ml bottle. And then things started changing around, of course, in 2017. They gave us a new Eau Sauvage Parfum, I believe, with the Fahrenheit. It used to be called Le Parfum, then they changed it to Parfum. And then, of course, they've kept Fahrenheit fairly similar. They haven't changed it much. Maybe the formula did change a little. I haven't noticed it much. But they did the redos of the Dior Homme Parfum. And, of course, now we have a complete dud with the Dior Homme Parfum 2025. But here I am smelling the Eau Sauvage Parfum. It is really, really delicious, guys. And yeah, as I was saying, I left it off of the 1010 list because I don't know what the status of these fragrances are. It's also not necessarily easy to get. And I've always thought the Dior Homme Parfum was my favorite of the trio of parfums. And of course, there's 4 parfums in the house of Dior's men's signature line. There's the Sauvage Parfum as well. I'm leaving that off. It's a very modern fragrance. And I'm not kind of categorizing it in this collection because there's like, 5 versions of, not Eau Sauvage, but Sauvage. But I always felt like Dior Homme Parfum was my favorite, and I've always ranked it in a lot of lists high up at the top. I've ranked these high as well, but I just don't know what the deal is with these fragrances. They're not necessarily on any websites in the USA. They haven't officially gotten the launches in the USA either. So doing the 1010 list, I left them off. Some of you were complaining that I didn't have any Dior's. Of course, I wasn't going to feature the new Dior Homme Parfum 2025. I feel like it's a dud. But these are great fragrances, so that's why I'm doing this video as a small supplement to that 1010 video. If you haven't caught that video, please go catch it. And of course, warn you guys, we don't know what's going to happen with these fragrances. I feel like it's a bit of an uncertain status right now. Any minute now, they can reformulate these and these will no longer sell. So it's a bit disappointment. With what's going on over at Dior. So this is the 2012 version here, and this is the 2017 version here. Oh, there's something in the 2012 version. I feel like that's not present in the 2017 version. I feel like there's a light fuzzy muskiness that's under all the notes in the 2012 that's not appearing in the 2017. So in the 2012 version, it's a lot deeper, it's a lot more intense, and that light fuzzy muskiness, especially I notice it when I'm comparing the two versions side by side. I feel like the 2017 version of EAU SAUVAGE Parfum is a lot fresher, and I feel like that myrrh is so intense in creating that overdose of ambery experience with that fragrance. Since they removed it, it became a lot fresher, kind of getting closer to the original EAU SAUVAGE. I'm not saying they're identical, but it became fresher with the addition of the Elemi, because Elemi, I don't consider Elemi resin as a true deep ambery note, even though you have that kind of an experience with it. It's a lot fresher, I feel like, especially with all the Elemi fragrances I've played around with. And here for sure with the 2017 version, that's the experience I get. But in the end, it's quite aromatic, it's woody, it's spicy, it's citrusy, and then of course there's the grassy, earthy touches of the vetiver in here. So you get all that kind of a deal happening. But when you compare it to the 2012 version of EAU SAUVAGE Parfum, it's a lot more fresher with the 2017 version. But still, a great scent. I hope they don't ever get rid of it. I really love the way it smells, both versions, the 2012 and the 2017. And of course, with the fact that they're changing things around, I'm uncertain how long this fragrance will last. So I'm recommending it to you as a great fragrance. It's a supplemental video to the 1010 video. Go catch that video if you haven't caught it. And if you're in the market for something really, really awesome from Dior, because Dior doesn't make great fragrances anymore, this is a complete dud. I hate that Dior Homme Parfum. The original is super fantastic, but that new one, complete disappointment. And again, this I highly recommend as well if you're in the market for it. I did see it at FragranceNet. Again, it's not on the Dior website, not on Dior.com. Okay, now on to the Fahrenheit Parfum, which is this right here. It used to be called Le Parfum, and they changed it to Parfum. So I was actually in France 2013 December, 2014 January, a few days before I came back to the States. I walked into the Galeries Lafayette, this big gorgeous department store, and they had just put out their first bottles of Fahrenheit Parfum. At that time, I was very new to the fragrance community. I didn't know what fragrances were coming out. I didn't know how to find out and things like that. So basically, I stumbled onto it. But when I saw the Fahrenheit Parfum, I got very excited. I bought it. In fact, I brought it back with me and did a review for my YouTube channel. The last one, it's no longer around. And, you know, it's been a favorite designer fragrance of mine for years. They haven't touched this one, at least I'm unfamiliar. The only change that I noticed with this was the fact that it used to be called Le Parfum and they changed it to Parfum. So I don't know if there's anything that they did to the formula itself. I'm uncertain, but a kind of a gourmand take on the original. And even though they claim that there's leather here, they say it's a violet leather accord, and the violet is not violet as the flower. They're using the violet leaves, and it exactly acts like that because the violet leaves in this is giving you that kind of ozonic touch. There's a major ozonic component, but even though there's leather here, it's not as strong as the leather you find in the eau de toilette. And I'm talking about the real original eau de toilette, because the current version of the eau de toilette is super weak. Even that version doesn't have that really intense leathery touch. But this doesn't have a lot of leather. It's blended in a way that it's noticeable, but it's not a standout note. It's quite citrusy when it starts off because they say that there's Sicilian Mandarin, there's violet leaves or violet and leather accord, bourbon vanilla. But I also get spices here. It's quite spicy. It's also a bit boozy and a bit floral. And then there's amber and the dry down along with the vanilla leather thing that's happening. Really a great take on Fahrenheit, whereas Fahrenheit, the original from 1988, is quite masculine. It's overly masculine. This is actually quite unisex here, the Fahrenheit Parfum. I think the way they created it, they really modernized it and gave it that kind of vanillic boozy touches in here. And you get leather, but it's not an overdose of leather. It's nicely done and balanced. To me, it acts more like suede leather. It's softer, and I've been mentioning a lot in videos that suede leather kind of does have that kind of a gourmand touch. This is a bit of a gourmand fragrance to me because of all the vanilla and the boozy notes. But again, they did a great job with it, just very modernized a classic men's fragrance from the late 80s, and they brought it into the 2010s. A great fragrance. I've been a fan of it. Again, I left it off because I'm uncertain what's going to happen with these fragrances. These two, in fact, the original Eau Sauvage Parfum and the new Eau Sauvage Parfum, I don't recall them. Oh, maybe they brought the 2017 version of Eau Sauvage Parfum to the USA. I'm not remembering correctly, but I've never bought or seen the Parfum editions of any of these fragrances except for Sauvage, not Eau Sauvage, but Sauvage, in any USA stores. So I don't think Fahrenheit Parfum came to the USA. It's always at the discounters and so on. But here I'm smelling this. It's great. It's the kind of fragrance that's loud, which I love. It's a parfum concentration. It's boozy. It's vanillic. It's spicy. And there is a little bit of a licorice thing happening here. Anise and licorice. A bit green in Ozonic because that violet leaves note, I think it's the violet leaves that's creating this ozonic watery effect in here, and mixed with the other notes it's creating a bit of like a licoricey vibe. But it's fresh and warm at the same time because violet leaves does create that kind of a ozonic freshness. But a really great fragrance. Absolutely love it. Again, uncertain what's going to happen with Fahrenheit Parfum, and it's currently at FragranceNet as well. I didn't find it on the Dior website. 75 ml. This is a 75 ml bottle for $114, and that is after the 40% discount that I mentioned earlier that I'm able to do. Search on Google, find an ad for FragranceNet, go over there, or I have it linked for you here, so you can click the link directly and go there with the discount code. So anyway, those are my thoughts on these two fragrances that are still selling, but I'm uncertain what's going to happen with these two fragrances because Dior's been doing all kinds of stuff. The next thing we're going to wait from Dior is a new version of Dior Homme Intense, and from what I hear, it's the same formula. So I guess Francis Kurkdjian hasn't touched the Dior Homme Intense. Now, why would they redo Dior Homme Parfum and leave Dior Homme Intense alone? It's the things, the decisions these big corporations make just don't make sense to me. Why bother changing Dior Homme Parfum when it was already a great fragrance and give us a dud, which doesn't even act like a true parfum to me anyway. But it's done. And again, if you're curious and you haven't gotten your nose on these two, I highly recommend you find some samples somewhere or just do a blind buy for these two fragrances. Get them because I think they're some of the best parfum fragrances. And as I said, there was a reason why I left these off. It's because I'm uncertain what's going to happen with them. Plus the availability is a bit difficult as well, whereas the other fragrances were a little easier to find and readily available. Although there were a few fragrances on that video that are a bit more difficult to get, but it's mostly about the uncertainty of these two fragrances. I'm hoping that they stay around, but we never know what the Dior is going to do. But also, before I go, there's 5 versions of Sauvage currently, the original. There is the Eau de Parfum, there is the Parfum, and there is the Elixir, and of course there's the dud, the one dud that I couldn't stand, which is the Eau Forte. So my favorite of the Sauvage series is the Elixir. I find it to be ultra luxurious, and it's a great take on Sauvage. But Sauvage as a fragrance, I feel like it's an afterthought. It's not really something that I can continuously talk about over and over again. It's a pleasant fragrance to wear, but I find Eau Sauvage Parfum, Fahrenheit Parfum, and the original Dior Homme Parfum to be more like fragrances that I really want and enjoy talking about. Does that make sense to you guys? Anyway, that's all I have for you guys today. Again, if you are curious about these and you haven't discovered them, figure out a way to get your nose on them, as we do not know what's going to happen with them, because they are totally destroying all of the great fragrances that once existed from Dior. And we'll wake up one day and they're poof, gone, and we're like, oh, I wish I bought a bottle of it, kind of a thing. Anyway, thanks so much for watching today's video. If you have any questions or comments, please list below. Please like this video, please share it, follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Bye-bye.